I just wanted to make a little distinction video about genre versus setting, because it's something that comes up sometimes in discussions about games, particularly as they're being designed, especially when they're in the very earliest stages. And people say, well, like, what is your game's genre? And oftentimes the response will be, oh, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's dark fantasy, it's high fantasy, it's modern day, it's urban investigations, what have you. And I would posit that those kinds of answers aren't really as helpful as you think they are, because they're talking a lot less about genre and more about setting. Setting is the kind of world that a story, or in this case a game, is set in. Setting. It's set in there. It makes a kind of sense. Trust me. Genre is a little bit different. Genre is about how the story is constructed. It's about tones. It's about themes. It's about what kinds of characters are appropriate. Genre has a lot more information, frankly. Like, if you were to fully describe a genre, obviously all labels are inherently inaccurate, right? Like, let's just get this out of the way. Saying what your genre is, like my game is about courtly drama. That's a genre, but it's also quite broad, and there can be exceptions. Like, it's not fully accurate. It does not perfectly describe the game. Never will, never can. But it is a helpful descriptor when you want to shorthand talk about a kind of game or a kind of story. So, all that out of the way. Genre carries a lot more information about the kinds of things that are going to be happening in your game than setting does. And so I think I would like to encourage people to talk more about, because, like, setting is important. Don't get me wrong. Setting is very important, and settings have bits of genre assumed in them. High fantasy usually is some kind of heroic epic, the good versus evil type of fight. Like, these kinds of things are sort of baked into, also, like, what is fantasy? Like, is it specifically medieval European setting, or is Star Wars fantasy? We usually describe Star Wars as sci-fi, but I argue it's space fantasy. These terms are inherently rough and sometimes unwieldy. And I think it's helpful when you are describing a game, either your own or someone else's, that you try to be as specific as possible. Boiling down a game's genre or setting to a single word or maybe two words isn't really going to be that helpful for most people. And so this is where I think a bit of media literacy is very helpful. And honestly, when I was in school, I hated any kind of like media analysis. Like, oh, what did the author mean? I don't know what he said on the page. Like, that kind of thing really irked me. Like, any kind of like awareness of different kinds of media and the analysis thereof. I hated it. Now, as an adult, I find it a lot more useful, particularly as someone who is developing stories and developing worlds and developing settings and game mechanics. I think that getting into the nitty gritty of, like, okay, so what is the difference between high fantasy and low fantasy? Like, what is the distinction there? When you have, like, is cyberpunk the same as like a techno fantasy? Like, can they be the same thing? How much overlap do they have? That kind of thing. So I'm trying to bring this around to like a specific point, and I think where that is going to end up being is that as I have stated in a previous video, our language for describing RPGs and RPG mechanics specifically is woefully underdeveloped. Still is. I'm finding now, I'm part of some online communities that I was not when I made that original video, and I'm finding that it is not as underdeveloped as I thought it was. Like, there's actually quite a bit of like it's being developed. It is being developed currently. Like, we are in the age where these things are being hashed out and decided. Terminology is being invented, and like, people are figuring this stuff out. It's a slow process and it's going to take a long time, but it's happening now, and I'm super thrilled about it. But I think an area that is maybe not seeing as much love as the mechanical aspects is the ability for people to describe settings and genres, particularly as separate things, but also as ways to convey meaningful amounts of information. You know, you tell me that your game is fantasy, and that's it. Like, that's end of sentence. I think, well, it's probably D&D. Just odds are, like, if you have to bet on something, bet on it's probably like D&D, which is a very particular kind of fantasy. Now, it's very possible that you meant an entirely different kind of fantasy. Maybe it's not even medieval. Maybe it's, you know, in space, or in a simulated world, or, you know, maybe it is medieval but it's not European. Maybe it's you know, Mesoamerican. Like, these all incredibly different kinds of settings all could be called fantasy. So I think that since this is Sabrock's opinions, let me tell you what my opinion is. My opinion is not that we need to use a whole bunch of words. It's not that we all need to go out and get an education in, like, media literacy and all that. Like, I'm not trying to say any of that. What I am trying to say is that I think there needs to be a broader awareness of the difference between setting and genre, and how much information those terms actually convey when we are talking about RPGs. Just to avoid miscommunications, because miscommunications are a barrier to development, and they are a barrier to those who are asking for help and those who wish to provide help. Like, if I were to try to describe Code World, the project that I am currently working on, how would I do that? It's dark on account of like I could go, like, give you a whole paragraph of describing the setting. It's kind of sci-fi. Yeah, I would call it sci-fi. I think that's fair. It's dark in tone, but it's also heroic. It's dark and heroic. That's an interesting. You don't usually see those right next to each other. I would describe it as bombastic. Oh, interesting. A bombastic setting? No, it's a bombastic genre. Like, that refers to the way that the game is played. You know, so like these, like, you could start adding in adjectives to a game's setting or to its genre, until, as you, like, move inexorably closer and closer to the truth, which is what the game actually is. Just be aware you're never actually going to get there. And so this is something that you both need to be aware of as you are describing a thing, also as a thing is being described to you. All models are inherently inaccurate. They are all wrong. They're all fiction. But some are useful, as they say in physics. And so a useful model, a useful way to describe a thing is one that carries the necessary information to get the point across, you know. And I think that is a lot easier to do when we have the vocabulary necessary. And I think making a distinction between setting and genre is an important one enough for me to make a video about, to be, to start with, but also important enough that I really think it should become widespread. The difference between genre and setting. They often get conflated, and I think that interferes with communication, and it interferes with, I guess, for lack of a less overly grandiose term, it interferes with progress. Yeah, I don't like saying that. That sounds bad. Anyway, yeah, that's what I've got to say on that.